Great. So we're going to be presenting our research, which sought to answer the question, how does AI affect cognitive learning functions? First, we'll be going through a little bit of background, then presenting a very brief literature review, followed by the presentation of our methodology, and finally, some findings and key conclusions to take away from our project. Firstly, for a little bit of background, the widespread adoption of generative AI or generative artificial intelligence in educational settings has fundamentally transformed how students approach learning. Yet little is known about the true cognitive impacts that these tools have on learning, even though these technologies promise to transform research and education. And so this study sought to explain and understand how LSE students use various tools such as ChatGPT, Quad, Gemini, and Microsoft Copilot, and see how it either positively influences them or detracts them from their courses' intended learning outcomes. And so we used mixed methods. We combined survey data with semi-structured focus groups to have both quantitative and qualitative insights. And the findings obtained here can be used to inform future generative AI use policies at LSE in the Data Science Institute and beyond.
Thank you, Emily. So I'm going to speak a little bit on the literature review to expand more on what Emily has explained on the current status of generative AI in education. So we looked at various pieces of research that are ongoing at the moment. There's currently a considerable scholarly interest in generative AI as a teaching and learning tool. But what we noticed is the focus is always mostly on the usage of AI, what patterns students follow, what AI tools are most used, what trends, what purposes, stuff like that. So it's more focused on the use of AI. Other research is also focused on the ethical implications and academic integrity aspect of it, and how students deal with the various academic integrity questions that come up with generative AI. So while these are all obviously, of course, important aspects to explore on this new tool, we identified a literature gap, which is the cognitive effects of AI on learning processes and outcomes. And that's what we thought to explore in our research. So instead of focusing on how it's used, we're focusing more on how it impacts learning and affects key cognitive functions that Emily's gonna explain in a moment. And these are the references, the literature that we looked at when doing the literature review.
So moving on to some methodology. I think Amani is going to present our survey, and then I'll present the methodology of our focus groups.
So we, as Emily said, we did mixed methods. We started with the survey and then followed that by a focus group to explore more in depth. So the survey we used to serve two purposes. The first is to also get some insights into how students use AI, which is the kind of main question that the literature focuses on already, but also to include some self-assessment questions in there to see how the students perceive the effects of AI on the learning skills. And I'm going to show an example of these, the key questions relating to this in a second. We also sought to identify the modes of using AI. So we used the receptive, resourceful, reflective, or resistant kind of classification of uses of AI to guide how we structured the questions. In terms of the logistics of the survey, we launched it, I think, in March. It was open for 2 months. It targeted all LSE students. We got a total of 164 responses. 104 were the valid responses because we used a question to the attention question to check to be able to disregard the responses that are not valid. And then finally, in terms of recruitment strategies, we used posters all around campus. We collaborated with newsletters from the Student Union and various departments, including the Data Science Institute and the International Relations Department, who featured our survey and their newsletters. And then we also used QR codes. We collaborated with professors to present QR codes for the survey at the end of the classes. So in terms of the questions, some of the questions concerning the first question, the first aspect were like, what are the learning tasks you usually use AI for? And then for the self-assessment part, we used this grid, which asked how AI, asked users or students to assess how AI impacted these cognitive functions, whether improved, impaired, or had no effect.
So then to answer the question, how does AI affect cognitive learning functions specifically, we conducted 2 semi-structured focus groups aimed at assessing the impact of AI on these cognitive functions. So critical thinking, deep comprehension, group work and creativity, and then memory and recall. We had 18 participants that were both initially randomly sampled, and then we completed with a non-random sample through the advertisement of the focus groups in the survey. And we created a set of different tasks, each aimed at assessing a different cognitive function. And so this enabled us to gain some qualitative insights that we're now going to present with the focus group results in the findings section. So these are some preliminary findings, and Amani's going to focus on the findings of our survey, and I'm going to focus on the ones from the focus group.
So we kind of we saw in terms of like analyzing the data we got, we thought to do kind of 2 things. The first is to analyze the kind of descriptive questions that we got from the survey. So things like the frequency of AI use, which you can see the results here. For example, we had the categories always, often, sometimes, rarely. So we had almost less than 50% of the students using it often. We had actually a lot of, I think, considerable responses that used that said rarely or not at all, which was a little bit surprising. We're also kind of at the moment, so as Emily said, these are preliminary findings. So at the moment, we're still kind of playing around with all the data that we got from the survey. It was, I think, 20 questions. There was a lot to explore in there. So we're doing things like exploring how they use, maybe it differs by the level study or by gender. We also have data on like the top tasks that AI is used for. The results are understanding a concept is the most cited task that students said that they use AI for, followed by summarizing a text and then brainstorming ideas and then challenging a concept. So these are the top tasks. In terms of the top keywords that students use when using AI, the kind of most used ones are explain and summarize. These were cited by almost all the respondents of the survey. Simplify what came third, and then check, but to a lesser extent. So we're currently, at the moment, we're doing more in-depth cross-analysis between the survey and the focus group, because unfortunately, we did the focus group a little bit late due to the exam season and all that. So we're currently looking more at the data to see how the AI results could inform the focus group results as well. But we did some sort of comparison, which Emily's gonna talk about now. So we compared the self-assessment results for each cognitive function with our own assessment of the performance of the students on the focus groups. Emily's gonna explain that more in a second.
Thank you. Yes, so focusing on deep comprehension first, you'll notice here that 51% of students who answered our survey cite or explained that AI has a positive effect on their deep comprehension, and this seems to align with the results that we found from our focus group. So in focus groups, we asked one group of students first to explain a difficult concept that no one had prior knowledge of without AI, and we subsequently asked them to explain a second concept that no one had prior knowledge of with AI. And we saw through this that AI enabled them to have thought experiments and examples that enabled them to better understand the concept. However, we found that the impact on deep comprehension depends on whether AI is used as a supplementary verification tool rather than a replacement for reflection. So students who first used AI and then compared it to other personal research seem to understand the concept better. Moving on to critical thinking, the majority of students, 46% who answered our survey, found that AI had no effect on critical thinking. But in our focus groups, we found slightly more positive results, where AI seemed to enhance critical thinking by exposing students to more diverse perspectives and strengthening their argumentative reasoning. For group work and creativity, 53% of students from our survey indicated that AI had no effect on their group work skills. But then when we conducted our focus groups, we found that AI actually seems to inhibit collaborative learning because it reduces interpersonal engagement. So for this task in the focus group, we asked two groups, one that was allowed to use AI and one that was not allowed to use AI, to find an innovative service or product for LSE students. And we observed that in the group that was not using AI, there was much more communication and discussion of lived experiences and more innovative and adapted idea. Whereas the group that was using AI mostly just copy pasted what was found with the AI, which was a much less innovative and personalized idea. And often at the beginning, when they were querying the AI, they found that the AI was just producing ideas that already existed. So things resembling, for example, Student Hub. And moving on to memory and recall, in our survey, we found 65% of students said that memory had no effect, AI had no effect on their memory. But in the focus groups, analyzing memory proved to be difficult. And so this represents an avenue for further research. Because in our focus groups, we asked students to read a text and then 20 minutes later write down what they remembered, but the text might have been too complex, or so we didn't get very much insights from the focus group as much as we did a survey. And some key conclusions. I can mention the first two. So we found that AI's impact on learning varies significantly by cognitive function. So while there seems to be little effect on memory or effects that we haven't explored yet, there seems to be positive effects on deep comprehension and critical thinking, but negative effects on group work and creativity. Context and usage approach determine the impact of AI on cognitive learning functions. So we observed this through whether students were using it as a supplementary verification tool or a replacement for their thinking.
Mm-hmm. Adding on to that, as Emily mentioned, collaborative learning seems to suffer when AI replaces human interaction, and this was seen, as Emily explained, from the way the groups interacted in the focus group, where the AI groups seemed to spend much more time on their screens. We observed a lot less speaking and engagement between each other in comparison to the other group. However, all of these impacts that we explained are also kind of determined by the time pressure and prior knowledge, of course, of students. We try to to navigate the prior knowledge issue by trying to have a random sample. But obviously the results are not going to be perfect. Also, a lot of students mentioned that the way they use AI depends on how much time they have. So for example, in tasks that we did in the focus group, for the first task, for example, for the deep comprehension, when we gave them a concept, and we left it open for them to use AI or not, whether they want to. the people who did use AI, when we asked them why, they said because we had very little time, but if we had more time, we wouldn't have used AI. So in terms of the patterns of use, that also depends on the time pressure, and also the way that they use it depends on how much time they have. And then finally, AI seemed to enhance argumentative reasoning, especially in debates, where we noticed that students were using AI as the debate was going on and the critical thinking task to also come up with counter arguments and kind of expand their thinking, come up with examples when they were engaging in the debate. So it seemed to enhance the quality of the arguments that they produced. So I think that was all. Thank you so much for listening, and we open it up for questions.